she stormed off, but she starts throwing stuff at me. And they'd gone and gotten a bunch of crap out of the prop closet.
Hmm.
And so first it's like empty boxes, and I'm kind of, this is like the credit roll,
Yeah.
whatever. And then it's like big objects. I mean, I think like a stapler flew at me.
It's the golden age of WWE. Larger than life of fantasy. Step in the ring, feel history. Welcome to the golden WWE.
From sensational to a queen. Today we're talking about Sherri Martel here on the Golden Era podcast with Shawn Mooney. Shawn, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, and I'm glad this is the topic we're covering. I have mentioned several times that I believe that Sensational Sherri never got the credit that she deserved for her career. And you mentioned from a queen. I think that when you talk about all of these greats and Mae Young and the Fabulous Moolah and China and all these others, and I take nothing away from them because they certainly helped blaze a trail for women in professional wrestling, but no one did for women in that industry, to me, more than what Sensational Sherri did,
Yes.
because she was able to cross over, and she wasn't just, a side piece, or she wasn't just a piece of furniture out there, looking great or whatever. She was mixing it up and could stand toe to toe with these guys. And so I'm glad we're talking about Sherri, because she really deserves some credit for what she did.
Of course. And as you mentioned, you mentioned some greats right there. You have Mae
Yeah.
Young, you have Moolah, you have China. But Sensational Sherri, I feel like, is one of those people, I don't know why she gets forgotten about as someone who's bumping for men, taking these huge, elaborate bumps in the ring to make other stars look bigger in the world. Like China gets the credit, Mae Young, Moolah. But for some strange reason, Sherri gets skipped over. Why do you think that is?
It astounds me that, I even looking up, like you do a Google search of, you know, great women professional wrestlers,
Hmm.
and this list comes up of three that we just mentioned. Wendy Richter, all these other ones, and Sherri's not there, and I'm like, what, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But it really is amazing to me. Now, maybe because she didn't have the championship belts like these others did.
Mm.
But as far as contributions go, and as far as working, uh, she was among the best. I mean, my God, she not what she could just do in the ring with another woman, but also how she could go at it in the ring with men,
Yeah.
and demanded that they give it to her as good as she could give it to them. And if you didn't, God help you, because you were going to pay a receipt that you weren't going to enjoy, because that's how she wanted it. I'm gonna go in there. I've got to make it look like I can keep up with them, and I can take whatever they want to dish out, and they're not taking it easy on me.
Yes. Yes. Any
And wow, I mean,
story.
and I got to see her work a lot, and some of the bumps that she would take, and try doing that in a pair of spikes like, was just amazing what she could do. And I had the opportunity to work closely with her for a while and got to know her, and in many ways, Steve, it's a tragic story. And you go back and you look at her entire life, she never had it easy. And it's just amazing what she was able to accomplish. And you have to imagine what that world was like as a woman trying to compete in it and get paid. Um, you had to really have wanted it. She had a child that she was not able to be around a whole lot when her son was growing up. And I remember she would once in a while she'd bring him on the road
Oh,
when he would be out of school or something like that. But you could just see the pain and the emotional toll that took on her. That she was trying to provide for him, in order for her to do that, she had to be like the rest of the boys and be on the road most of the year. So, but even from her beginnings, and just the story that, no easy life. And she must have really loved this business to have put up with what she did along the road, literally. And so, I'm glad that we're giving it, we're having a tribute here to her because
Yeah.
she deserves it.
Of course. And as someone who's so impactful with her, let's start from the beginning because born 1958, in February 8th, from Alabama, grew up loving basketball, didn't have a
Yeah,
father
quite
at
an
home.
athlete.
Didn't have a father at home either as well. Her mother used to bring her to wrestling events in Memphis. I mean, excuse me, in Mississippi. And that already starts you off the path where you see how tough she is on television.
Yeah.
She must have been twice as tough in the real life of just being herself because you're growing up with no father. You have a mother at home, obviously working hard as hell, trying to raise children in a time where always hard to raise children. But here we
Mhm.
are, fatherless, 1958. It's that's a sad tale already to start off. But then, as she grows up, age 16, goes to Grizzly Smith. That's the
Yeah.
father of Rockin' Robin, Jake the Snake, and Sam Houston. And if you've heard any stories about this man, he is he's a character. He is not the
Oh wow,
nicest
that's
person in
putting
the
it
world.
mildly.
Well, I could say he's a piece of shit. Would you like to know that? If you watch the Jake the Snake's documentary that the
Yeah.
WWE produced about 20 years ago, you will hear the stories of Grizzly Smith being one of the worst people you've ever encountered in your life. And Sherri goes to him, 16 years old, asking to be trained, says, no, come back when you're 21.
Mhm.
Let's stop there because according to other rumors that Sherri and Jake the Snake were dating around this time as well. So
Mhm.
there's a lot to unpack here. Grizzly Smith, you you were like, no, let's not call him a character. Let's tell the truth. And it's true. He was not a nice person. Did you ever hear stories of Grizzly?
Well, I mean, they're well documented and coming straight from Jake,
Yeah.
of how he. I mean, a lot of stuff in there dark, and it's a wonder Jake turned out the way he did. I mean,
Hmm.
you hear of kind of incestual things going on, and but overall, and Grizzly was just not a great person.
Yeah.
Influential in the wrestling business, and you know, helped a lot of people start careers and going through the territories there. But it shows you what the business was like back then. That here you've got a 16-year-old girl going to having to go to somebody like him. He even turning her away, probably knowing that could end up in jail. You know,
Mm.
over trying to employ somebody like that or whatever. But it shows the grit that Sherri, even early on, had, where she wanted to get into this business and nothing was going to stop her. I'm sure that when Grizzly told her, well, come back when you're 21, she didn't go back and, just decide, well, I'll wait,
All right, that's a long time.
5 years and then go give it a shot. I'm sure that she found another way, which she did. And it wasn't long before, she uh, gets involved in the business. But then, of course, back then, and where she was living, people hooked up with people and then got married. She got married young. And, that didn't work out well, but she did have a son in there. And as I mentioned, that child would be a part of her life and a major emotional toll on her, because you can imagine, as I said, here you want to provide, it's the only business I think at one point she had been an exotic dancer, and I'm sure that wasn't the life that she wanted to have. And she loved professional wrestling and knew that that was her ticket in a sense. But you can imagine the choices she had to make along the way in order to find success in it, which she did reach heights that women had never even dreamed of doing
True.
in the business. So just very, very difficult, but just shows, like I said, that she was one determined woman and paid a big price outside of the ring.
Now, we've talked before about sacrifices for your dreams. Sometimes you don't realize what a dream actually costs. When someone says, I'll do anything to achieve my dream, well, sometimes anything means a lot of things, where She has a son. She's married. She leaves her son, leaves her husband to go on the road to achieve her dream, to do what she wants to do. And
Yeah.
that has got to be tough for anyone, man or female, deciding to leave your family at home to go, listen, I love you, but I love this too, and I have to choose one or the other. I want to provide for you, but I can't be locked at home. I want to go see the world and travel. Like we've talked before about how tough it is to work the road. Like how how difficult for a mother to leave her children at home to go achieve a dream that she wants, but
Yeah.
yet her son now doesn't have a mother at home.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that was tough, but she had, people that obviously she must have trusted that she was able to go and do that. But it's
Right.
just also the separation that, like you said, you're not in their lives every day, so you become kind of this, surrogate in a sense. You pop in and out of their lives, and that doesn't bode well for a relationship with your kid. And they don't understand that, I'm just trying to do this to make a living and give you a life. They want mom home.
Right.
But that's, like I said, that was what Sherri realized, that this is the only thing that's really going to make it for me. I'm not going to go dance in clubs for tips,
Right.
and she was a talented athlete. She had the ability to go in there and tough as nails, as we would find out. And everyone's in their living room seeing her perform
Mm.
later in the ring, but tough as nails for sure. And at that time, Steve, where did you go? If you're a woman and you want to get into professional wrestling, and Moolah was basically it.
Yeah.
If she took a liking to you or saw you had some talent, that was pretty much where you were going to go. And at that point, and for decades beyond that, uh, they were as much a sideshow as, basically like the midgets.
I was just gonna say that.
I know that's not politically correct to say, but I mean,
It's true.
that was what it was. And they had, there was a camp. These guys had it for little people, and they would train, and it was kind of the same thing. Like Moolah was where, if you were going to get to be working in these territories for these promoters, well, Moolah pretty much had it nailed down. That was her territory all across the country. And when they wanted to bring women in, they would contact her. And then she was still working, of course, but there were others that she brought in. And Sherri got in. I don't know how long she lasted, because I think, as the legend goes, that, and we saw it firsthand on the road, that Sherri liked to party.
Yeah.
Even then, play hard, and work hard and then play hard. And so Moolah had her rules, and I'm sure after a while it was like the errant daughter who just you couldn't tame. And so Sherri found other ways. But it is interesting to think, though, that back then, that was pretty much the one place you would go if you wanted to work. And so you had to play by Moolah's rules. And as I mentioned at the top of this discussion, that women were just kind of, you brought them in when business got a little slower. You wanted to give them a little eye candy. And some of those women, wow, like, they weren't the divas we've seen since.
Yes.
They weren't what you'd call lookers.
No.
So Sherri, had it all, in a sense. She was very attractive, and she was athletic and sassy, and so she could be a good draw. And I'm sure that's what Moolah saw in her. But Sherri learned early on the power of not only being athletic but also being attractive. And so it was a great combination, because, like I said, there weren't a lot of these women out there that were that not only had that ability to get in the ring and mix it up, but also look good.
Mm-mm.
That certainly help people like Wendy Richter. She was a very attractive woman too, but you didn't see a whole, that wasn't part of the
No.
part of the business then.
Mm-mm.
But they bring him in like a sideshow. So they didn't work. They didn't have divisions or anything like that. So just imagine what it was like. You really we talk about how the men and how much you really had to want it back then because the whole kayfabe business, and they basically tried to weed you out and you work for nothing.
Yep.
Imagine being a woman trying to get into this business.
I
Yeah.
it must have been extremely tough. And
Uh,
for decades and decades and decades, everyone was praising Moolah. And then about
mhm.
a few years ago, maybe like a decade ago, actually, the WWE tried to have this Moolah classic. They renamed it Mae Young because all of these horrible stories came out about Moolah taking money from all the women, making sure that you
Mhm.
weren't booked in a way that would make you stronger than Moolah on the circuit. Because if you were going to go cross town somewhere, Moolah was going to make sure she got that piece,
Yeah.
like kind of like the mafia in a way. If you want to work for
Yeah.
me,
No,
you want to get
absolutely.
it booked. The only way you're going
Yeah.
to get booked in this world for women's wrestling is going through me. And if you go through
Yeah.
me, I'm taking your money and I'm making sure that you don't get any better than me. And so the shocking that years ago all these stories came out because no one knew that. Everyone just thought, oh, Moolah was the greatest women's wrestler of all
Oh,
time.
yes. Helped all these women. Yeah.
It helped them all.
No, it
And then
was.
they did a Dark Side of the Ring about it. And they and
Yeah.
had all these women do interviews talking about the tragedy and the suffering. Because all these women are staying in this one house where Moolah lives. So it's like a sorority where, she's in charge and you shut up and listen. Sherri Martel actually being kicked out of this because of her partying and the way she wanted to trailblaze her career is shocking because I would think if I'm Moolah and I'm running this scam, well, you want Sherri on your side because she's a good looker, she's strong, and she's
Yeah.
talented. But it was very shocking for me as a wrestling fan to hear all these stories about Moolah. Did you ever hear these stories before?
Oh, yeah. And if you can go back and listen to the interview I did with Wendy Richter
Mm-hmm.
with primetime Shawn Mooney, yeah, she goes into very deep detail about how controlling Moolah was and how the influence that she had in the business and how she literally, screwed her over many times.
Oh yeah.
Where she, like you mentioned, would have to be put over. And even when she was in the WWF at the time, you know, that's the other, they say the original screw job
Yeah.
with the belts for her.
The Spider
And
Lady it was
she
her
walked
name.
away. Yeah, she walked away from the business eventually. But Moolah still had her hand in that,
Yeah.
So she really did control the business for women, and in many ways, I think as many inroads as she made for them, she also uh, blocked a lot of them from that own selfish, I need to be put over, and I need and literally just right down to the finances of it. So as much good as she did, as I think she did as much bad, but they wouldn't have had something like that originally a place to go for these women to actually learn and train because Moolah certainly did know what she was doing in the ring, and
Mm-hmm.
but it's too bad that she didn't have more of a sense of really trying to help these women instead of taking advantage of them.
Right. It's
Yeah.
probably if I was, I'm not saying what Moolah did was right, but what I'm thinking is if Moolah got into the business and it was so tough for her, she's like, well, I
Oh
can't let
God.
anyone get above me because it was ridiculously tough for me
Yeah.
to get here. So I'll help these women, but in reality, like I need to hold them down to make sure I keep my spot because it took her a long time to become the number one women's wrestler in professional wrestling in the
Yeah.
world. So I get it, but I don't get it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
unfortunate. But Sherri, she got kicked out at sorority and she's off to the Memphis territory early on, managed by Jim Cornette. And Jim
Mm.
Cornette, and still in today's wrestling world, is you either love him or you hate him. I love him. So that's how I feel
Yeah.
about that. Just it's interesting. Memphis. You always hear Memphis as being somewhere the wrestlers would go to either learn, be trained, or become something beyond their wildest dreams. Like when you think of Memphis, like why is it such an impactful thing for professional wrestlers to end up there?
Well, the you talk about what, say, the Northeast, of course, was McMahon Senior.
Yeah.
But that was kind of that was the emerald on the hill. Everybody was always wanting to go to that territory. So it wasn't really where you went to develop as much. And Vince Senior was, basically was all business. Vince talks about how he wanted to be able to get in the ring. It's like, no way, that's not going to happen. You got to keep this separation. And then, of course, you had the Minnesota was also a well-known territory, but I don't think anyone, as far as really development and the rabid fans, and I'm sure people will argue with me in those parts of the country, but that down south was just a hotbed.
Yeah.
And then you had people that really understood the business and were running things that were still in the ring. People like Jerry Lawler, his name keeps coming up time and time again as we talk about this period of time before really, and during when the WWE had its ascension. But Jerry Lawler's name keeps coming up again and again because, he had a tremendous influence. And Jerry Jarrett was another guy that, if you got in there, it was because they really saw something in you. They got a lot of guys early, that had a lot of talent, but were green in a sense, and they just needed the seasoning. And you had so many different towns and places you could visit there. These guys would just get in a road. They'd be, a couple 300 miles a night going to these different places, and crowds showing up there where it wasn't just a couple hundred. There'd be thousands at some of these events. So to get into that territory, to me, it's one of the most influential areas of the country for professional wrestling. And especially, in the Mid-South, they talk about Mid-South and all of these guys, Hacksaw and Jake and Ted DiBiase and JYD, Junkyard Dog, all these guys came from there. But you had an area there with the country where you could go up kind of levels and stay within the South. And if you made it to like Mid-South, then that's where that was the AAA, I guess you could call it,
Mecca,
as far as
for them, yeah.
before, yeah. And then you might get that call to go to the WWF, go up north, and even to those, the territories of Minnesota with AWA and all these, but I think as far as developing and like down south, if you got into that mix there, that was a great training ground. And it's awesome that people like Jim Cornette and these other greats in professional wrestling recognize that with Sensational Sherri. It wouldn't have cut it if she was just some good-looking woman who wanted to be a wrestler. Like, right. She had to be able to dish it out too, and I'm sure they saw that very early on. And her athleticism and her ability to perform, she could cut a promo even then. So I'm sure she wasn't sensational yet. But I'm sure that they saw this, that Sherri was gifted and different. She wasn't somebody who, was going to go out there and just try to look good or whatever. I mean, she could go. And so, and it's great that she met these guys, like you mentioned, Cornette. I'm sure he helped her out tremendously.
Oh yeah. And again, he started off as a photographer as well. So like all these little bits and pieces of how you start in the business. Someone helped Jim. Well, Jim's going to help somebody else. And it's the pay it forward method in professional wrestling, I think. Some people hold on to their spot and don't want to help anybody. Some people, I remember the Headbangers always share stories, Mosh and Thrasher. Mosh has a great book out right now, by the way. But these guys always praise Jim Cornette because he helped. He didn't hurt. He lifted up. He didn't push down. And so helping Sherri out here when, women's wrestling, as we brought up, is not the number one thing in the world right now. We have on WWF television, In 1985, you have Cyndi Lauper, a celebrity working out with Wendy Richter. You have all that happening. But on the other side, in AWA in 1985, you have Sherri winning the AWA Women's Championship. You hold it 3 different times there. Also, as a manager, managing tag team champions. And it's funny because when she's a manager in AWA with Buddy Rose and Doug Summers as the AWA
Mhm.
tag team champions, they're in a rivalry with Shawn Michaels and Mari Jannetty at the time. It's just crazy that flash forward to 92, Sherri's managing Shawn Michaels. So they knew each other then. They know each
Yeah.
other later on as well. But just like a lot of wrestlers, AWA is a stop. And where you really want to go, as you brought up, is New York. Let's get to the WWF. And Jesse Ventura, another name popped
Yeah.
up, put in a good word saying like, hey, you should bring her in. Like, she's very talented. We're trying to expand our women's division here. You have Wendy, you
Mhm.
have Moolah, you have Cyndi Lauper. Let's bring her in. Jesse Ventura, another man who seems to always want to help professional wrestling, unlike some other people. Like, what's your experience with Jesse as a helper instead of someone who hurts?
Yeah. Well, you know, Jesse was really a guy that was all about, the boys. Maybe it was because of his military background. I don't know, but I think he always felt like, as a team, you're going to do better. And that is, I mean, the greatest display of that is his attempt to organize the wrestlers.
Well,
And we know how that went.
doesn't work for me.
But he's also, Jesse's also somebody who doesn't forget. And we know that I don't know if it was a feud, but I don't think he was never fond of Terry Malaya after that all happened, and there were other incidents too, that with the merchandising and that kind of thing. But I think Jesse was always about that. He, you would see him all the time talking to a lot of these young guys, and because he had experience all the way around. And when he came in and he realized I'm not, he was the whole superstar Billy Graham's kind of shtick, and he had the look and everything like that. But I'm sure he could hold his own. But when you hear other guys talk about him, he wasn't the greatest worker. Uh, but he understood the business, and man, he cut a promo, and I still think his announcing work was tremendous. I was glad to see him back, even at this point in life,
Yeah.
still doing it. But that's just the kind of guy that Jesse is. That he it was always, you want to talk to Jesse. Well, it'll be a great conversation as long as you talk about Jesse. I always feel, but at the same time, I know that he really did. He loved the business, and he really did want to help people. And the way that I really could see that happening is that everybody is working, and that was his shtick, and that's what he did it. But outside of that, it was a guy that really cared for people. That if he felt like you were somebody that had the talent, but might be struggling because he knew how tough this business could be, he'd sit down with you. He'd pull these guys aside. And so that's why I deep down, I always really liked Jesse a lot, because when it came down to it, he was a good guy who wanted to see people succeed. You don't want to be on the other bad side of him, but if he saw something in you, he wasn't going to go step in front of you to try and take it from you, or, he was going to try and help. And the fact that he would do that for, Sherri was what tells you something right there.
Right.
He didn't have to do that. And he did. He wanted to see her succeed.
I was just gonna say that because like he didn't have to help. Like
No.
there's a lot of people who don't have to help, but then
Mhm.
he decides to just go out of his way and say like, hey, we should bring this person in because we're building all these characters, we're building all these gimmicks. Like, this is someone who could really help us. And eventually she comes in 1987, defeats her former trainer Fabulous Moolah, July 24th, 1987, winning the women's championship, holding it for 15 months. She becomes Sensational Sherri now, no longer Sherri Martel, more of a nice gimmick name. Man, imagine Sherri. How do you think she felt? It's like, oh, you kicked me out? You're not going to train me anymore? Screw you. Let's flash forward a few years later. I'm beating you on television for the women's championship. How do you think Sherri felt deep down inside about that?
Oh, I'm sure it was it was a victory for her and comeuppance for what she, what Moolah thought of her early on. And it's also shows you that she must have had some pretty good talent because probably Moolah wasn't real happy about it, but
No.
she didn't have a choice in the matter, which shows you right there. So yeah, I'm sure that was sweet to be able to have done that, and then who it was that she took that belt from. Yeah, no question about that.
Yeah, because Moolah beat Wendy Richter for the original screw job as the Spider Lady when Wendy's trying to kick out, she holds down her legs to count to 3. Now Moolah has to do the job to her former Padawan, Sensational Sherri. 15
Yeah,
months.
who she really had nothing to do with getting her there.
No.
Which was also sweet too.
Yeah. Yeah.
She did it on her own.
Didn't help me, but maybe for different reasons, but still Sherri now is women's champion. But we are in a division now. It's no longer the rock and wrestling era. We are in what I consider now the golden era of WWF. And there's not a lot of women to wrestle you. Like before with Wendy Richter, there was this spotlight on her because of the connection to Cyndi Lauper and the connection to MTV. Sensational Sherri did not have that same spotlight. She was now just the, as we brought up, like, here come the little people. Well, here come the women. Like that. That's unfortunate for her because she's remembered more as a manager than a wrestler. So, how do you think she felt? You come in a year later, but she trained to be a wrestler, but she's not being pushed as one.
Well, you also have to know. You have to figure into that equation that women were still not, big part of it. And they still, brought in, even after that, even after rock and wrestling, you would have thought, okay, now they saw the reaction that people like seeing women wrestlers. Why aren't we doing more? And that really came down to that there just weren't other personalities, other women out there that could go in there and draw. We've talked about before how, Hulk needed Andre. You need to have somebody that's going to elevate you to that point and then be able to be right there with you and have this plausible outcome.
Right.
And I mean, try and name a few. There just weren't. And so, but they realized Sherri's talent and they wanted to utilize it because they knew the kind of heat she could generate. I mean, she was just a heat generator. She was not going to be a baby face. That just was not her MO. That's just not the way it was going to work. And so, well, we can't have her going up against men. We can't have matches like that. Yeah. But man, we can get her involved and we can push the envelope to like, how far can you push a man before he wants to smack this, and is it justified? And we have to think about where we were in our culture then.
Yes.
Randy built a character out of it from being a bully over a woman. So having somebody like that and that she deserves it. Damn it. I hate to say that, but boy, if I ever thought a woman should be smacked, that's that Sensational Sherri, But so what do you do with her? Well, you get her involved as a manager. And right there too, she made inroads there for women that when you didn't see that. If they had a woman who came out with a wrestler, it's because he was, she was eye candy or something like that. This is one who they put Sherri in these positions where she's to their knowledge, she's calling the shots. She's figuring out who this guy should go up against, and she's there at the ringside to get involved with little shenanigans and helping to cheat. And so, that said a lot right there. But as I also mentioned, when it came down to it, to taking bumps, Sherri's like, let's go. She
Yeah.
loved it. And a pair of spike heels and getting in the ring and do my and she would take if let's say that they worked out she was going to take a clothesline. That guy better lay it in. He better take her off her feet. Don't do any of this little,
Yeah, don't tap me.
um, and you better lay it in so that it looks good. And I'm not saying, Ultimate Warrior type, but, and they're working, but you better make it look really good. And
Yes.
I saw more than one occasion where she got in one of the guys' faces backstage and says, you bet, you never better, don't ever do that again. I'll take your effing head off. And they got the message soon. So when she was out there, she was working and she was going to take a bump. It better be the same as what you would do to a man out there. And
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
because she could return she could return that receipt. And I saw that a few times too.
Yeah.
So uh, after a while, I'm sure initially it was kind of raised eyebrows with these guys, but then after that, they had a lot of respect for her, and especially like also on the road. Uh, you can imagine the harassment that when women, because they weren't on the road all the time, and when they did, and they might go around to some of these house shows, that the shit they put up with guys on the road. So um, that same respect was out of the ring too, and Sherri was I'll right flat out say she was one of the boys,
I was gonna say that. Yeah.
plain and simple. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Now it's interesting because she loses her women's championship to Rockin' Robin in 1988, October 8th.
Mhm.
While now, let's think about this for a second. In '88, you have Miss Elizabeth on TV every single time Macho Man's out there. The Mega Powers are formed in October of '88. So,
Mhm.
no, '87 that is. Yes, and so she's on TV all the time. Miss Elizabeth, that is. We have a women's champion who's not really presented on TV at all. Like, what was the relationship like between Elizabeth in Sherri? Because Elizabeth, not wrestling, on TV all day long, posters, merchandise. Sherri, your women's champion, not on
Yeah,
TV, no merchandise.
yeah. Well, I everything that I ever saw between those two, they were really good friends. I mean,
Okay.
they were very friendly. They would, and also think about it too, Steve. When you're out there, uh, there's not a bunch of other women on the road. Guys weren't bringing their wives. They didn't have a wives club or anything like that. So, it's pretty much Sherri and Elizabeth. And so I think they bonded over that.
Okay.
And they were always, I always remember seeing them together. And Randy certainly didn't mind because it's a woman. He wasn't threatened by Sherri, and he got along with Sherri really well. So that wasn't the problem. It wasn't personal and to Sherri. And Sherri also understood how the business worked. Elizabeth was selling. I mean, she was over. And the women worked. It wasn't a thing then. Um, a lot of times they would do it just out of respect to say, yeah, we pay attention to women. It's all equal rights and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. But it wasn't something that Vince was thinking that going to make him a lot of money. They weren't. I mean, look where they were on the card. You didn't see the women's championship as a main event or even a
No,
second
no,
match.
no.
So it was still thought of that way. It wasn't a part of what they were doing. Um, but that's how, Sherri's kept inserting herself more and more into being with these big name superstars. And that's what changed her career. That's what made her money. She started making good money doing it. Um, wasn't going to do it as a champion. It just wasn't going to happen.
No, but it's strange because even when she loses her championship, now she has to wear a blonde wig and become Peggy Sue and hang out with
Yeah,
Jimmy Hart and a honky tonk man and do little honka 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 love. She has to be out
yeah,
there as a background singer for the honky tonk man while he's the Intercontinental Champion. So he is a high profile talent. She is out there. I guess but she's not part of how eventually with Macho Man or Ted DiBiase or even Shawn Michaels, she is a center point of the combo. This, she's just there as Peggy Sue, as
yeah.
You know what? If you watch see Grease, she's dressed like the pink ladies. So
Yeah.
it was just it was always odd when you saw her like that because you'd see her as a scary woman on TV, and then out of nowhere, there she is. Has hey, put on this blonde wig and put on some sunglasses so people don't recognize that you're actually Sherri. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't
Well, and it's like, there's a lull there where what do we do with it? But it also shows you that they valued her because it kept her around. I mean, why? Why would they keep her around then? And because where do you go? It's not like you say, hey, go work somewhere else. Well, you know,
where.
after even then, for women, they could go around to some of these territories, but it wasn't like they were going to find steady work like you know, other superstars could. Uh, they couldn't do that. But just the fact they kept her around, and yeah, sure, it wasn't the greatest gig, but it also showed you that Sherri was willing to do whatever they needed her to do to keep on to stay on that stage wherever they asked her to stand, and that, and it paid off because it got better.
True. Now, yeah, you're right about that because even from the beginning, we talked about sacrifices to achieve your dreams, leaving your husband and son at home. Well, guess what? Peggy Sue's just another pit stop onto your elevating to achieve your dreams. And once the mega powers break up at WrestleMania 5, well, Macho Man eventually beats Hacksaw Jim Duggan, who was King Duggan at the time. Well,
Mhm.
Macho Man gets a crown. Well, a king usually needs a queen. And Sensational Sherri joins up with the Macho Man, Macho King, Queen
Yeah.
Sherri, Scary Sherri. This, I feel like, is her breakout role of, like, wow, like this person has found all the right pieces, all the right points to be the character she's dreamed to be. And her and Macho Man, one of the greatest combos in professional wrestling. Miss Elizabeth and Macho Man were good.
Yeah.
Sensational Sherri and Macho King were great.
Well, yeah, and I think that you can put both of those combinations
Yeah, they're
together.
not one or the other. They're
Yeah,
the same, I guess.
but and I have to be honest, that when that pairing was put together, and I was happy for Sherri because I knew how hard she worked, but I was thinking, how the hell is this going to work? Randy's this overbearing presence out there. Elizabeth was always the meek, you know,
Okay,
second person.
okay, Macho.
Yeah, and then you have somebody like Sherri who's freaking dominates. Um, so I'm like, how? And then I was always like, even Randy becoming a king, I thought was going to be short lived.
Hmm.
And like, what are they going to do? What? But look at it. Look
Yeah,
how it worked. That uh, that whole thing. I mean, what a run! And it was great for Sherri, and she ate it up. So sometimes you never know, but when you've got two really incredibly talented people, they find a way to make it work, and that combination did because you know Randy being a heel, I know he loved it. He loved the being a heel,
yeah,
uh, and Sherri. There was none better as far as like she was just dastardly, the stuff she would do at ringside, and people just hated her and wanted her to get it. And then when she would take these bumps and get her comeuppance, they popped. They just loved it because and she would makeup would be all askew. Her dress would be torn up. One of the heels would be broken as she staggers back to the into the end of the back of the arena, and it was awesome. It was always this payback, but she kept coming,
yeah.
and she'd be out there, mixing it up the next night, and got a lot of screen time because of it. It worked.
Yes, you're right about that. And you brought up Macho Man's promo skills, where anytime he was cutting promos with Miss Elizabeth, she was just there. She would be like, "Okay, Randy." With these two, Sensational Sherri and Macho Man, if you watch any video of them cutting promos together, it's a back and forth situation. They're working off
Yeah.
each other. He'll say something, she'll say something. He'll say something. They keep playing off each other versus just letting one person speak while the other person's in the background. I think Sherri could have easily just let Macho Man take over the screen. She was also there, and she started wearing a lot more elaborate outfits. Her
Mhm.
makeup, the way she'd paint her face. Like, let's go through that because in wrestling, we always remember certain people with their personalities and their wrestling gear. Sensational Sherri like lifted up the game of how to present yourself as a on-air character that nobody can ignore. Like when you would see these outfits, like who's making these things for her? Is she getting them? Is she doing all her makeup, or is there someone backstage helping her?
No, she would do. I mean, a lot of that was all her. She got help in a lot of her costuming and that kind of thing. But I think she, that pairing with Randy was great for her. I think she learned a lot from Randy because, as we know, Randy would had all these elaborate outfits. Some nights he'd have three. And there's always the lore of how tight Randy was about money, but he also was a businessman. Understood, okay, in order for me to make more, I got to spend it.
Yeah.
And and to him, it was an investment in him. And so, and a couple of things here. You mentioned the promos. That must have been tough initially for Randy because, as you said, he was used to being the dominant figure on that screen. When he did a promo, he was right there, in front of that camera, and Elizabeth didn't really say anything. If there was one thing she did, she was one quick line or something like that, but she rarely talked, and Randy would carry that thing. And then you got somebody coming in who can hold her own and actually bring something to the table and elevate whatever you were talking about. And so initially, I think that I'm sure that when they started doing the promos, it was Randy was the one who did most of the heavy lifting there, and then Sherri might come in and at the end. But I think Randy also realized he was smart when it came to what was working, and was able to recognize that and said, yeah, you know what, she's making these promos even better.
Yeah, she
and so
was.
And for him, give up some of that time and then that back and forth. So I think that pairing was really good for both of them too. I mean, Randy probably learned a lot that, you can have somebody else in there with you and still, and really put over your storyline and help it. Not just, she wasn't just this, manager piece that came out there and said a few lines. Like Sherri helped to sell the story. So I think that both of them really benefited by that union.
Yeah, and she certainly helped Zeus, who came into the WWF around this time, because you have Macho King and Zeus taking on Beefcake and Hulk Hogan at SummerSlam 1989, building off of the Mega Powers exploding at WrestleMania V. No Holds Barred is coming out that year as well. So there's a lot of cross promotion on the Arsenio Hall show where Sherri goes on there, but with Zeus. So pretty much to help Zeus along in the conversation if he has to speak, because he's pretending to be Zeus, not the actor playing Zeus. So they're obviously putting a lot of weight on her. And around this time, there's a show called Spotlight. And we mentioned this before on another episode. And this is where you get called in because you're no longer just having to do interviews backstage or the event center. They're going to bring you on as a host because, we need more Mooney, damn it. So
can't get enough.
No, I can't get enough either. Miss Elizabeth and Vince McMahon were hosting a little while, and we mentioned on a different podcast where Randy was like, we're not going to do this anymore. So Sherri gets brought in, and you get brought in, Shawn Mooney yourself, but Ian Mooney also is involved. This is where you get to establish probably more of a relationship or maybe a different type of friendship with Sherri. Take me through that, because now you have to work with her all the time for this show, Spotlight. What was that experience like?
Ooh. Well, before we get to that, though, you mentioned the Arsenio Hall show, which, if people remember back then,
huge.
It was a big deal. It was. He kind of reshaped the talk show genre, if you will. And he was very, very popular. And he also happened to be a big wrestling fan. So he would bring on, he brought a lot of guys on, some for the good and some for the bad. I mean,
I think everyone was on there.
Wasn't the best, he probably would have loved to have taken that one back, but it was a great, stage to be on, to be able to, this was the development, like really of like mainstream. You know, you see these guys that would come on like a talk show guest. You know, it
Yeah.
wasn't like the old talk show with Vince, the and Alfred.
Tuesday
Yeah,
Night Titans.
Tuesday Night Titans. Yeah, this was big time. This is real, and I have to imagine that when Sherri got on that show, she must look back and said, "Man, look how far I've come.
It's on
Look at me.
YouTube. You
I'm
can
on the
watch it.
Arsenio Hall show tonight."
Yeah.
And she was really over. So when Spotlight, you mentioned that Vince and Elizabeth had, Vince had wanted to do that show with Elizabeth, and they would bring her in, and it was a combination. Randy was like, this is just making life much more difficult for us to have to come to Stanford and shoot these things. I think we're doing every 3 weeks, or however we do it. We'd shoot, a bunch of shows, and so that was. And Vince would get bored of doing a show where he had too much going on, and that's how this opportunity came up. Well, they knew I could do it because I was in Stanford, but they didn't know how to do it with. How could I do both shows, because the event center was in every single show.
Right.
So how could I host it and then have the event center? And I don't know if it was Bruce or whoever came up with the idea of Ian. I came up with the name, but they said, we want you to, you're going to host this thing. Oh, spoiler alert, Steve, do we have to put the spoiler alert across the screen now? So
Sure. What is it? Is it there was a green screen behind the event center?
yeah. No, it's about Ian. So should I not reveal that it was me?
No! This podcast is canceled.
I know.
I gotta go to my therapist.
Yeah.
You bastard.
All these years, I can't believe I actually am admitting
You
this
kept
now.
this in this whole time.
Yeah.
All right, I'll accept it.
No one has ever seen Betty either, by the way. But Bobby
boy.
Heenan was certain I did have a sister named Betty. So that was I got this down, and I'm thinking, I get to be a heel. I mean, it would be right. How could I be two good guys? Well, Bruce is saying, well, you're going to be with Sherri, so you gotta be a baby face. I'm like, I had it all worked out. I was thinking, we could do that because the green screen, you could do the magic, and I could be doing the event center, and Ian comes out and smashes the guitar over my head, right, and takes over the event center.
Wow.
I mean, there was just endless storylines here, right?
You could fight at WrestleMania, Ian versus Shawn Mooney.
Yeah, but
blindfold match, so we don't see actually your faces.
Yeah, so it was not to be. And so the big change, I said, well, how am I going to be different then? And Bruce is basically saying, well, you're not, but we'll dress you different and do your hair different.
Yeah.
Wah, wah, wah. So anyway, and the second big surprise was that I was going to be hosting this show with a spotlight show with Sherri. And I'd always gotten along with her great. And Sherri was she was intense.
Okay.
And whenever you did stuff, and initially it started out, the shows were fine. It was kind of scripted, and then as we got more and more comfortable, then she started being Sherri. And it got to the point where, and I'm this baby face, and so she, a lot of the stuff was her raging. She would, that was her character. And that woman would just beat the crap out of me every week. I mean, she would find a reason. And then it got to a point where, I'm sure Bruce was telling her, give it to me. Where when we do these shows, and we do the tapings, right? So I would have to do 3 of these. By honestly, God, by the time I'd have, it was black and blue. Because she'd lay it in. And I was like, I would tell her, like, Sherri, isn't this supposed to be a work? I mean,
right.
Come on, it's like supposed to be like butter. And there were episodes where, I remember there was one episode where at the end she was mad at me for something I said, because Bruce would always say, say this because I know it's going to get her mad. I'm
Great.
like, oh my
Thanks,
God.
Bruce.
And so the end of it, as I'm standing on the set, she stormed off, but she starts throwing stuff at me, and they'd gone and gotten a bunch of crap out of out of the prop closet. And so first it's like empty boxes, and I'm kind of, this is like the credit roll, whatever. Yeah. And then it's like big objects. I mean, I think like a stapler flew at me, and trash can, and I'm like, that's enough already, right? We got
we got enough, right? We're done.
Yeah. Another time she holds me hostage, and she they tape me to a chair, and the big payoff was that the chair she was gonna knock me over in the chair, and I'd there'd been a sign like on a piece of cardboard that said "Help me" or something like that.
Okay.
Well, when she flipped that chair, it like did it so far that the first thing that hit was my head.
Oh shit.
But she just loved doing it. But when she wasn't beating the shit out of me, it was fun. I mean, she really was. It was fun to be around her, and I got to know her that she really was a really nice person, deep down. And she talked about her kid all the time, and how much it hurt her to be on the road, and she would try and you get a school break or something, and she'd bring that kid on the road with her. And and he'd stay in the hotel room with her and come to the events, be backstage. But it was, and at that point, she's making decent money. I mean, really good money. Oh, yeah. So she's able to do more for him, and provide him with a better life. But it just never could replace, mom being with her child, right. And that, I don't think that ever left her, because then at some point, that child grows up and she didn't have anything. I'm sure that, not that he didn't stay in touch with her, but you know what I mean? Like life goes on. And I had to wonder later in life if I'm sure there were times when she felt like, was it worth it? But at the same time, how else was I going to earn a living? So, it was tough. And imagine the road life back then too. And then, and we've heard from other guys before that, you get on that treadmill, you get on that road, you can't get off, because you don't know if you don't want to get hurt, because if you're, they lose favor for whatever reason, somebody else comes in or whatever, you cannot stop. Yeah. You've got to milk it. You got to, wring everything you can out of it, because it's not going to last. At some point, they tell you, okay, we're not booking you anymore, or whatever, something happens.
Right.
And so she reaches this pinnacle as far as for women in professional wrestling. And then you've got, what do you have to show for it? Got some money, maybe you got to buy a house, but you didn't get to live a life every day. You didn't get to go to your son's basketball game, or you didn't get to go and had a picnic in the town or something. You
of course
got home when you could, but we know what that story was like too. Guys, it was the same for her. She'd get home for a couple of days and then have to go again. So
it is unfortunate, because
but Spotlight was definitely an experience.
Yeah,
it sounds, I don't know how. I'm trying to think like how many shows we did, how long we did it, but man.
What's interesting, when I was doing research,
I learned how to work then, man. I felt like I was in the ring,
Well, I imagine when someone's trying to make sure that that this is fake, this is not fake, but this is where you're supposed to feel it, but not 100% feel it. But she's like, well, I'm gonna make sure that you understand what we do out there is real. You and your studio and your green screens and your event center, like, I'm gonna hurt you, and you're gonna understand why. This stapler is coming for your forehead. Though,
I mean, I was glad she liked me. I don't know if she didn't.
Shit, imagine if she didn't like you.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, It is unfortunate you brought up, though, that about family, because you can have all the money in the world. The only thing you cannot buy is time, and you can't go back and go to these basketball games or have a picnic or things of that nature. So, but the road calls you, because without the road, there is no money to support the family at home. But do you have a family at home if you're always on the road? Like there's the give and take of the rock and roll lifestyle of professional wrestlers or celebrities in general. So, but it is
Price
great
to
to
pay.
hear. It is great to hear that you and her got to have a fun time. She does make history, though. Her and Macho King go to WrestleMania 6, having the first ever intergender match. It's her and Macho King versus Dusty Rhodes and Sweet Sapphire.
Sapphire, yeah.
And we did a whole podcast about Dusty Rhodes and Sweet Sapphire, where Sherri was not too fond of Sapphire, I believe was the consensus we got from that. Do you know? Because you're saying her and Liz, fine. Her and Sapphire, what was their relationship like?
Yeah, but at the same time, it was business,
Okay.
and so Sherri was going to do what she needed to do and helped Sapphire. They figured out what could we do with her. She was not a trained wrestler by any stretch, and so they got to have some kind of match. So with that, it was business, and so she helped her. Uh, that was the scenario. That was the business.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that she knew how it worked, and it was an opportunity to that they thought worked with Sapphire. Whatever there was behind that, they were trying to humiliate Dusty or whatever you want to think, but he made it work.
Oh yeah.
And so it's business, and you make money. And come on, you're at WrestleMania.
And again, historically, first intergender match. We'll have them obviously later on in time, but this is the first one. A mainstream television. Obviously, these probably have existed somewhere in some territory that someone here would be like, in 1972. Like, all right, I understand. But on mainstream
Yeah.
WrestleMania, this is the first one. And she continues being on Spotlight. She's having a great run with Macho King. Keeps on going through that. The women's division has been phased out. The women's championship has been vacated. It's been retired. It doesn't come back until Alundra Blaze in Bull Nakano in 1995. So there's a lot of like, okay, well, you're not going to wrestle anymore. Like you're just a character on television. You're going to be the manager of the Macho King. There is a segment, it's hard to find, but it's a steel cage match, and she's climbing up, and Warrior sticks his hand through the cage and rips off her clothes, so she's exposed. And if you go out there and watch any like shoot interview Sherri does, someone asks her, "What's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you in professional wrestling?" And she brings up that being exposed in front of everyone because Warrior ripped off her clothes. And again, it's at this time it's probably boys will be boys type of situation. Like, hey, it'd be funny if you do that, but like, it's not funny because now she's out there, and even years later, shoot interview, she's saying, "This is the most embarrassing moment of my career." There could have been a million different things. It's like, I get it, like haha, but it's not haha.
No, but that shows you that even that, then the how sexist the business still was. And people think all the things that Sherri did, oh, well, it's just working. Well, that humiliation, that just reminded her that maybe the business hadn't come that far for women.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a lot more symbolic to her than just somebody, ripping her clothes off. I think it was more symbolic in the sense that how far have we come that this is what they still have to do with us. And, it's like the teeny weeny bikini, everybody wanted to see that. Oh, give us something. And like I talked about, but it was still, that was still a big part of the business. And come on, let's be honest. What were the divas?
Oh yeah, the whole Attitude Era is like
Glow,
bra and bikini contests and mud and KY jelly matches and pillow fights, and even in today's world, like there's still that aspect of anything where oogling
sex is always sold.
Yeah, it always has. Playboy was in business for a
will.
long ass time.
Yeah.
So, but in '91, she tries seducing Ultimate Warrior at Royal Rumble '91 to get a championship match for the Macho King. Warrior's like, nah, we're good. But
Not having it.
she's down on her knees, begging for a championship match, and you're like, oh my God, what is
The
happening?
symbolism of that, like, oh, come on, right?
Yeah, it's like clearly what we're trying to do here is
Yeah,
we all know, I'm not going to say it, but
that
we all know what
that had
is
Vince written
happening.
all over
Yeah, get on your hands and knees. Yeah,
it.
yeah, beg
Yeah,
for
on
it.
your knees.
Yeah, you like that, don't you? Yeah, like a warrior. Yeah. And then Warrior's like,
Yeah.
no. And then the scepter shot from the Macho King cost Warrior his match. So maybe he should have been, I guess, more receptive. But
Mm.
WrestleMania 7, it's the end of the Macho King in Sensational Queen Sherri because they break up. Macho Man loses retirement match. Sherri beats up Macho Man in that matchup. Liz gets in the ring, tosses her off. That's the end of that combo.
Yeah.
On the same night, though, Sherri comes out to help the Million Dollar Man against Virgil. So we have a new manager combo, Million Dollar Man, Sensational Sherri. She even appears on Lifestyles of the Rich and
Rich and
Famous
famous. Yeah.
because that was a very popular show at the time, too. And she's on there because she's with the Million Dollar Man. They are rich. This is the combo that never really gets talked about because Macho King gets talked about, Shawn Michaels gets talked about, Teddy, because she starts calling him Teddy Bear, and
Yeah.
it's a I don't know if Million Dollar Man needed to go from Virgil to
Yeah.
Sensational Sherri.
That didn't work for me either. I didn't know, but she was still working. So,
So yeah,
but I agree. Ted didn't need anybody,
no,
as he proved.
no, and again, it only lasts for a little while in '91, but then when the Rockers break up, Shawn Michaels and Sensational Sherri get together.
Oh, that worked.
Now that was the beginning because Shawn Michaels at Royal Rumble 92 debut his brand new sexy boy type gimmick. And then she becomes the manager. She's dressing just like him in white leather in different combos. They're matching. She holds a giant mirror so he can check out his hair and present
Yeah.
himself. She even sings the first version of HBK's music. You know,
Huh?
oh, Shawn. That's a nice fun fact
Yeah.
for you. It's
Yeah.
just this combo worked. Shawn Michaels needed something to elevate himself, and Sherri already worked with Macho Man and the Million Dollar Man. So whoever she works with next is going to elevate that person's game. Shawn Michaels. Like, what do you think of that combo? Because without her, I'm not sure Shawn Michaels would have become the star he was right away.
No, and that's a really good point. That we've got that transition, and John talks about it too. That he's experimenting of what's his gimmick going to be, what's his shtick going to be, and Sherri helped with that a lot, and you know, and also helping him be this arrogant heel kind of type, that. And so, yeah, and it did work. And you wouldn't have thought then, Sherri's older then. You would have thought that it was going to be some adoring little, 20 something but not, you got a shrewd, attractive, older woman who knows how to handle a man. And you got to be that kind of woman to handle Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and it did work, and it helped both of them. And I think you're right, though, that was a great transition period for Shawn, and to have her by his side for that period of time was what really benefited him.
Well,
No question.
yeah. And while this is going on, they're having a great run building to SummerSlam 92, where she's wearing an outfit where her ass cheeks are hanging out. Bobby Heenan even makes a comment that there's a full moon out here in London tonight when she gets knocked out and Shawn has to carry her and her ass is just in the camera. Another probably like Vince, like, get a close up of that ass. Yeah, get in there. But she eventually turns babyface because Mark Jannetty finally returns after all of his own personal demons in life. She gets smashed in the face with a giant mirror, which sets her off on television, and she turns the baby face. But the reasoning, I guess, according to rumors, is she was removed from television because she was having too much substance abuse issues backstage. And even later on in 93, she gets fired for the same exact reason. Her babyface run didn't really last very long. Luna Vachon beats the shit out of her in an early episode of Monday Night Raw, but she's out. She's fired from the company for failing drug tests. Now, again, according to the Times, it's marijuana. So we're not talking about some crazy ass, cocaine or whatever, but she's fired from the WWE in 1993. Are you shocked? You were out of 93 as well, but she gets fired.
I honestly can't say that I was shocked because, yeah, they say he was marijuana, but I think that there were a lot of other issues. I think that that toll really started to, you know, started to be more evident. She would, you know, she would just not. It wasn't the same Sherri,
Okay.
and when it got to that point, and it was sad to see, but and I think she was pretty defiant about it too, unfortunately. So I wasn't really shocked because she wasn't the same. She could go out there, you know, and do as all these other guys could, um, on with who knows what was in their systems,
Right.
but you could see it when she wasn't, and you could see that it was finally catching up to her. When you're doing all that, you know, you're going. Eventually, there's got to be, you know, something's got to give, and yeah, that at that point, yeah, it was starting to really be evident. You could see it. Yeah.
Wow. Because even her character on television wasn't the same. Like, yeah, some people have a run, and even if she wasn't fired, I think her run would have ended eventually because
Mhm.
what else is there? 93, we're transitioning into this new generation. We're changing up characters. We're getting rid of all the golden era wrestlers and replacing them with younger talent and, you know, and weird gimmicks like dumpster men and NASCAR drivers and all that stuff. But it was sad to see her leave. But just like anything, there's another territory. She pops up in WCW, eventually managing Ric Flair, holding with Harlem Heat, Booker T, and Stevie Ray, 7-time tag team champions. She was known as Sister Sherri. She had an
Yeah.
amazing run in WCW as
Mhm.
well, but WCW, I think, was a little more lenient on why would we drug test you if you're making us money. So, you know, eventually, though, again, same exact thing, released as time would go on from WCW for performance and drug concerns. It was
Mhm.
sad because she disappeared from wrestling. During the Attitude Era, we did not see Sherri Martel on television. It was done.
Yeah.
We got her back in 2005 in the WWE. She returned when Kurt Angle had a rivalry with Shawn Michaels, and Kurt Angle was singing the Sexy Boy theme song and brought out Sherri to sing it along to bring back a 92 nostalgic memory. But
Yeah.
Kurt Angle locks in the ankle lock on Sherri, making her tap out, and that was unfortunate. In 2006, Sherri took her place in the WWE Hall of Fame. Well deserved. The $1 Million Man inducted her. Man, talk about someone who deserves it because the ratio of men versus women in the Hall of Fame, it's completely different.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a tremendous tribute. And to have Ted induct her, you know, Shawn could have done it as well,
Yeah.
but it was just a great tribute to her. And I still, as I said at the top of this discussion, that I don't think she's received the credit that she deserves. But let's be honest here. If you're a professional wrestler and you are inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, it does not get any better than that. And I am sure as she stood on that stage, she had to reflect on the price that she paid and what she had accomplished
Of course.
as that that 16-year-old girl, from the backwoods basically, and never really had the opportunity to get an education. Her education was life and the road, and to be a woman and be able to accomplish what she did in that industry is uh, nothing short of a miracle. Because, as we said, it wasn't just what she accomplished in the ring as a professional wrestler woman, but the fact that she was one of the ones who crossed over legit and could stand toe to toe with anybody and make any gimmick work, and help put over these guys. She wasn't just something on. She wasn't a sideshow. She was right in there helping to push these storylines, and was an accomplished manager. How many women can say that in professional wrestling and have that influence? So that was the pinnacle, no question about it. And overall, though, with everything, it's a tragic tale too. At the same time.
Yeah, it is, because in 2006 when she gets put in the Hall of Fame, that's the
Yeah,
ruthless aggression era, and she's from the golden era. So like all these
yeah.
fans maybe didn't know who she was, now are suddenly giving her praise. Unfortunately, a
Yes,
year later, she passes away at the age of
yeah.
49. According to the reports, there was high amounts of drugs in her system.
Prescription drugs. Yeah,
Yeah, and according to everything you read, is like it was an accidental overdose. Well, so it's just sad that Hall of Fame one year, next year she passes away, and in today's world, this is 2007, she passed away. In today's world, like as you mentioned off the top too, is she does not get the credit she deserves. The Moolahs and the Mae Youngs and the Chinas always get
hmm
that credit. In today's world, you have the Rhea Ripleys and Charlotte Flair, but Sherri Martel, without her, I don't think you're gonna have having a China or a Rhea
yeah.
Ripley or people like that.
No, and it's unfortunate that that's the way it ended for Sherri. I would have loved to have seen, her be brought into the fold, like we have seen a lot of these former superstars that remain with the company, and I imagine she could have had a big influence on the women that were, the divas, or of course that's old school in a sense. Really,
Yeah,
now it's hard to think of it that way, but the women are as popular in many cases as the men are, and get full billing because of it. And they have one in particular, Sensational Sherri, to thank for that. And as we wrap this up, though, I really I will I've said it for years that I really believe that you're going to have a Mount Rushmore of women in professional wrestling. Sensational Sherri's face better be on that granite, because she, you know, uh, did so much for professional wrestling, and not just for women, but for professional wrestling. That you could have a woman in there and be ready to mix it up and put over those storylines just as good as the rest of them, as Bobby Heenan and Jimmy Hart and all these others. So a great tribute to Sensational Sherri, and she really deserved it. She really deserves it.
of course. And when you think about Macho King, Million Dollar Man, Shawn Michaels, all Hall of Famers, all some of the greatest wrestlers of all time,
Mhm.
characters, gimmicks, promos, when they got with Sherri, they could have easily slumped down because of their rise to where they were. Macho Man, Mega Powers, world champion. He loses it. He could have easily just dropped into the bottom. Same thing. Million Dollar Man had Virgil, could have dropped down. Shawn Michaels, Rockers breakup, could have dropped down. With Sherri
Yeah,
being added to each one of them, they didn't drop down. They went up even more.
yeah, yeah. She did. She helped. She enhanced them. That's for sure.
Yes.
She made them better. And I'm sure if you could have discussions with some of them who are no longer with us, they would tell you the same thing. I'm sure Shawn Michaels would admit that she did add to. She helped him. She wasn't just somebody they stuck him with. That that she made them better. And there's no better compliment than that.
Of course. And Sherri was all about, presenting to the fans amazing characters. And right now, though, on our Instagram, I did ask people to send us some questions for you about working with Sherri because, you got your ass handed to. She kicked the shit out of you.
Yeah,
So
still sore.
um, let's ask some questions. Um, here's a good one. Um, what from Ganga Growins? Was it really a brick in her purse? Now that's a good question because she often would put a brick in her purse and then hit another opponent in the back of the head or in the. Was there a real brick in there, or was it, a worked brick?
No, that wasn't like some foam brick. You just had to know how to work it. But yeah, because you can't put something like that, like a work brick or something like that, because it's not the bag's not going to have that same heft to it. You know what I mean? You can't. It would be too light or wherever. You got to have that where it's yeah. But you got to know how to lay that in. She was a professional and knew how to do it.
from
So yeah.
from Jared England from the Facebook page. He wants to know How scared were you when she tied you up to that chair on Spotlight? How scared?
I was
Scale of
very
1 to
frightened. I
10.
mean,
1 to 10. Where are
because,
you at?
well, yeah, it was, that may have been of all the situations they put me in there with Sherri, that was because I really was. I mean, that wasn't just, loose little ties there. So I was totally at her mercy. And Bruce always loved to do that. He'd love to put me in these situations where I get, because no, nobody could really take the boots to me. We've talked about that before, where that was important. People couldn't really rough me up because
Nope.
I had this credible journalist gimmick to uphold. But in these tapings, and it was Ian,
He can take it.
they worked out. He never missed an opportunity, and Sherri was always game because she loved working you. But yeah, I knew, I'm like, just to go over the chair, I'm like, the riser was carpeted. If anybody remember, it was carpeted. So I'm thinking, okay, that's going to kind of break my fall, but she's still going to push me over, and she doesn't do anything easy,
Yeah.
She knows how to work when she needs to, but if she's got a chance to do stuff like that. So I was very frightened, and justly so, because as I said, when she did that, when she flipped me, she really, and I went back, and man, my head, my neck, and I was like, saw stars.
Jeez.
So yeah, very
Wow.
frightened.
From
And rightly so.
this is from Facebook as well. I think it's Jeff. Spells his name Jeff with a G. When you guys were filming Wrestling Spotlight, were you aware of the fact that this particular show had less availability than other shows because it was syndicated? It was a much smaller audience. Did that allow you guys to have more freedom and be a little looser on set, knowing that very few people were going to see this, unlike Superstars or Wrestling Challenge?
Yeah, it was, you treated it just as much as if it would be Challenge or
Okay.
Superstars or Primetime, because it was our product, and it wasn't. I know years later that they did stuff like with Todd Grisham and everything, where they had these phone-in shows, and it was kind of this crazy loose format, and he would
Yeah.
get into it with callers. But that's not, no, we didn't get away with stuff like that. Then it was, they oversaw everything, and
Okay.
and I didn't know if it was three people or a million. And it was never, to me, when you're looking at a camera, you're just, you go
Now
do your job.
here's one from King Dumbu this is from Instagram as well. Have you ever
The
tried
king,
she's the king? Have you ever tried
the
her
king.
did she ever get or feed you, the crew, her spaghetti recipe? Recently, Lalani Kai has shared this recipe online, and so apparently it's a very popular recipe that she would feed some of the boys. Did you ever any of her spaghetti?
No, I never had that opportunity. I know that she was going to carry her over the bowl, but I knew that she liked to cook, and she would bring stuff that she baked and everything. Yeah, it was great. I was a little worried and everything. She was going to spike it or something, but
Poison you?
yeah.
Poison, yeah. One Miss Steffi wants to know, why do you think Sherri isn't talked about like the same esteem as a Bobby Heenan or a Jim Cornette or a Paul Heyman or a J.J. Dillon?
Well, what do you think? I mean,
Is it
and it's sorry to say it, but
because she's a
uh,
woman? Unfortunately.
yeah, I mean, it was the times.
Okay.
I think, but really, I think if you really do have a discussion and you lay out, okay, what did this person do for the superstar, and who are they working with, and well, that doesn't happen unless she carries the bags, so to speak, and she could. I mean, look at all the. I mean, I think if people really look at it, then they would say, yeah, you've got to include her in that group, but she's overlooked in that situation too, like from a manager viewpoint. Just that's a really good point. That's a great question,
Thank
and
you.
and you're right. Why is that? It shouldn't be that way, but because she was a great manager, and look how, and as I said, look who she worked with. That doesn't happen unless she can do it, unless she can pull it off.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll take it to this last question. We got so many questions, so thank you guys so much for that. A lot of these questions we discussed through this episode, but I think this one's a good one from
Yeah.
Stewie John Palmer. We'll wrap it up here. What is Shawn's most everlasting memory of Sherri? Now, I'm sure there are many, but if he can think of one that has stayed with him in today's world. Thank you, Stu, for that.
And thank you for that question. I was going to tell the story as we wrapped it up anyway, but As I told you, Sherri was a ribber too. She was, she would do all kinds of stuff. And I remember there was one bit that we did where she was trying to find something that maybe it was her crown or something that was missing. And so we were shooting at Hamilton. That's where we shot the show, 120 Hamilton, in the studio. And we're going to do this bit where we're going to have like a remote camera. She goes searching for this crown. And they got her this, wand, that metal detector wand.
Mm.
And she, for sure, somebody stole it, and and the crew, everybody is suspect. And we had a guy that was a cameraman, and he kind of ran the studio. His name was Russ Bacon, and loved the guy. I worked with him every day. He had a great sense of humor. And whenever we would do these bits, everybody got recruited. Like, you're going to be in the bit, just go over. What's going to happen is Sherri's going to burst into the control room, and she's going to line you guys all up against the wall, and she's going to go with the metal detector. So I kind of, she's in a rage, and she grabs, I'm going to find this thing, and Mooney, and so I'm kind of following her. The camera comes in, and then she goes, all of you, all up, up, up. They're all like working in the control room, like that they're doing the show.
Yeah.
And she makes them all up, go against the wall. And she starts going up, people got change in their pocket or something like that. She gets to Russ, and she starts like in the bottom of his ankle. And she'd worked with Russ before, too. So she knew him, and so she left. So she's like, goes up between his legs, and she brings this thing up, hits him right in the crotch. And I swear to God, like, Russ's eyes crossed. Like, you ever see in the movies? It's like, and he knows it's the bit.
Yeah.
And she did it on purpose. And then she like goes on to the next guy, and you see Russ is standing there against the wall, just leaning. And then she gets to the end, she says, all right, I'm in. She storms out of the place. And I just remember that Russ just kind of shrank down like, ah! She racked him so hard. And the whole place just like, I was crying. It was so funny. And she came back in. She goes, was that a little stiff? he laid there for about 10 minutes. I mean, but that was Sherri. I mean, she did just loved it. But that, to me, that stands out because she was like that. It's like an imp, like she knew what she was doing. And that is a memory I have forever. I don't remember laughing so hard, and that was all Sherri. So
wow,
I loved working with her. She was deep down, she was a great person, and I'm glad we did this episode today, Steve, because she really needs to be out there of how much she contributed to professional wrestling.
Agreed. I know we brought up Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
Her face is chosen up there. You choose who you want to be the other three, but Sherri is up there in mine because of what she contributed to the wrestling world. Without her, we wouldn't have so many other people involved. So, but I'm so happy. I'm glad we did it too, because we always say sometimes we're going to do an episode with that person or this person.
Yeah.
But today we wanted to honor Sherri Martel, from sensational to forever a queen in my eyes. So thank you so much, Mooney, for sharing your thoughts and feelings and your stories about sensational queen Sherri today. And thank you so much for all your questions. Really appreciate participating.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Because we really enjoy sharing some of these stories that sometimes you got to grab Mooney and we got to shake him and get those stories out of him. And I'm glad we got that one about poor Russ and his private parts. We salute you, Russ. But again, before we wrap this up, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just that please, in the future, and I hope that people that watch this have a better understanding of Sensational Sherri and her contributions to professional wrestling, because she did make a difference. And as we said, she deserves to be mentioned in the top of all women who have ever been a part of professional wrestling. So, I hope we did a bit of a service today.
Yeah.
so that people that hear this, that they will bring her name up when people talk about women and their influence in professional wrestling.
Hell yeah. I agree. Well, again, thank you so much for everyone watching. Thanks for your questions here on the Golden Era podcast on the Prime Time with Shawn Mooney Network. I'm Steve Fall. He's Shawn Mooney. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
It's the golden age of WWE. Larger than life.